Hello, I'm going to teach you how to play Lost Adventures. Now, this is a game that has two phases to it, a map phase, which uses this part of the board, and a temple phase, which uses this temple track. What I recommend to new players is that you first learn the map phase, play the map phase, and then come back and learn the temple phase when you reach the temple phase. All right? So, what's common to both phases of the game are three elements. First, there are your set of character cards. Each of us has a tableau. We start with two. These have icons that are either blue, which are going to help us with the challenges of the map phase, or red, which are going to help us with the perils of the temple phase. Second, we have these temple secrets cards. This is information about the lost temple. Where is it? What perils will you face? What is the nature of the true chalice? And then the third common element is that you have your player notepad, which on one side lets you write down information you acquire, and on the flip side is used for tracking your hubris. You're going to get hubris in both phases. You don't want it. You want to get rid of it before the end of the game. All right, so in the map phase, each player is going to get 5 turns. After everyone has taken a turn, we move the story track 1 space forward. And for each space on the story track, we each get a turn, and you do 4 things on your turn. First, you travel to a different city that's up to 3 spaces away. And you can use these shortcuts to go one way. You can't end up in Berlin, and you can't end up in the city with the enemy pawn. So let's say I'm going to go to Paris here. You put a cube in the city you end up in. The second step is to flip the top, you face an encounter. So you flip the top card in the encounter deck for the city shape you're in. This is a circle city. So I flip this card over and it shows X marks the spot is my challenge. It's a luck challenge, a horseshoe challenge. Okay. And then I'm going to look at the cards in my tableau that have that icon. Here I happen to have 2. Each of those gives a clue point. In addition, the back of the top card in the deck has some icons on it. Fedoras also give clue points. Brown fedoras are 1 clue point, so are green fedoras, but if I use the clue points of green fedoras, I must take 1 hubris by marking it down on my player map. In addition, some of these cards have spade icons, and these move the enemy toward you. In addition, cubes in your city move the enemy toward you. So in this case, there's 1 cube. The card I have has no spade icons, so I'm going to move the enemy 1 space toward me. That's enough. They reach me. All right, so when the enemy reaches you, that means you either lose 1 of your clue points or you have to discard 1 of your character cards. Now, you started with 10 character cards. You can discard a card from your hand or from your tableau. So the enemy reached me. I had to discard something. Okay. The third step of the turn is to use those clue points to look at temple secrets cards. You look at the icon in your city. Here, this one is the map. So it's this icon here for the perils that I'll face approaching the temple. And recall that I had 4 clue points, so I can look at a card that is worth, or cards that are worth up to a total of 4 clue points. The value of a clue is the number of cubes next to that card. So this one is 2, this one is 3. So I have 4, or possibly 5 if I use that green fedora. I'm just going to look at this card, and I note that it is a react challenge. It has a wavy arrow there. Okay, so I'm going to notate that on my notepad here. I'm going to say that the second peril is the wavy arrow there. For 1 of the cards that I look at, I can take a cube from the box next to that card. That makes that information easier for everybody else to get, but this cube is going to help me in the final hubris challenge. Or I can actually use it in the map phase on a future turn. I can announce before my turn that I'm paying that cube, and then any fedoras that show up in this lower box here also count as clue points for me so that I could use in a future encounter. So let's say I'm going to take that cube. All right, the 4th step of the turn is to add a card to my character tableau on the right-hand side, or to flip the leftmost card in my tableau to its iconic side, which doubles the icons that are showing. Okay, so that is the gist of the map phase. You do those 4 steps: travel, encounter, view temple secrets card, add character card, and we each do that 5 times, and then the temple phase begins immediately. Okay, so again, I suggest you go and play the map phase now and come back when you're ready to play the temple phase. Okay, you're back. Great. So what you're going to do now is shuffle together all of the cards into a single deck. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. There we go. And this is going to be used for the temple phase. The first thing we're going to do is locate the temple. Where is the temple? So what you're going to do is you're going to write the city that you think it's in. The information that you've gotten tells you either the shape of the city that the temple is in, or the region that the temple is in. So let's say I think that the temple is in city C, which is Ankara. All right. Now we reveal, and if I was right, I would put my marker in the correct city space on the temple track. If I was in the wrong city but in the correct region, I would put it on this space. And if I was in completely the wrong region, which I am, I said it was in Ankara and it's actually in Eastern Europe, I would put myself on this space. The enemy always starts on space 3 on the track. Let's say my opponent made it to here. Okay, then the next thing we do is we start to face the temple perils. We have 4 that we have to face. And for each one, you write down a number here, which is your bid. So let's say I want to bid 4. Okay? When everyone's ready, we reveal our bids, and then we reveal the nature of the temple peril. Okay, this one is heat. So what we do is we look at our character cards for the number of heat icons that we have. In this case, I have 1, and my bid was 4, so I have to take hubris for the difference between my bid and the number of symbols I had. So in this case, I would have to take 3 hubris, except that if I'm behind the enemy, I get 1 hubris discount, if you will. So in this case, I would take 2 hubris. Okay? The enemy is also participating in this. Their bid is given by the first 4 cards in the deck here. We add up the total number of spade symbols on those cards. Here it's 3. So the enemy is bidding 3. Okay, so I bid 4, the enemy bid 3. Let's say my opponent bid 2. Now we move on the temple track. The person who bid, you move as many spaces as the number of players who bid lower than you, including the enemy. So I had a bid of 4, that was the highest. I'm going to move 2. The enemy had the second highest bid with 3. They're going to move 1 space. If a player is furthest along after a peril, then they put a cube on this space, and that signifies that when the enemy should reach that space in the future, they just skip right over it as though it weren't there. So the enemy, you've sort of sprung the trap, and now the enemy gets through a little more easily, or something like that. Okay, so we resolve all 4 temple perils that way, and then we end up in the chalice room, where we must guess what we think is the true chalice. So here we're going to write down a letter. It's either A, B, C, or D. Let's say I wrote down A. And then we reveal 3 false chalices. Okay, so it turns out A was wrong. I got it wrong. Okay, if you have the correct chalice, you move 3 spaces forward. If you have the incorrect chalice, but you're within 1 of the correct chalice, so in this case, it's not A, B, or C, that means it's D. Well, I'm next to the correct chalice, so that's sort of close. So you get 1 space of movement for that, but you also must take 1 hubris for that as well. All right, and then the final action in the temple is the exit peril. We have to exit the temple by facing one of the perils we previously faced. So once again, we write down our bid for this. Let's say I bid 5, I don't know. And then we see what the peril is. It's peril D. So it's as if, for the purposes of paying for our bid with hubris, we're going to look at this one again. It was a climb challenge. We remember that from the first time we saw it. And so climb, icons in our character cards are the ones that count here. Okay, but other than that, that's resolved just as the other perils would be. Okay, and at this point, we have moved along the temple track a bunch. The temple phase is now over, the game is over, and it's time for the final hubris challenge. If one of us happens to be behind the enemy has defeated us and we are eliminated from the game. But if that's not the case, if we are on or beyond the space with the enemy pawn, we are still alive and still in contention for the win. We now have to face the final hubris challenge. So we gather all these cards together, shuffle, 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 and then we face the hubris challenge in reverse order of score. Your score is the number on your space here. The further back you are, you go first. And what you do is you flip 4 cards one at a time, and each fedora symbol on the cards, the color doesn't matter now, purges 1 hubris. That means you cross off 1 hubris on your mat here. So here I have 3 hubris, or 3 fedoras, so I would cross off 3 hubris. In addition, if you have cubes to spend, you must spend them. You can spend 1 cube per card, and this would let me purge 1 additional hubris if I had a cube, which I did. So we do this for 4 cards. If you have, by the end of the 4th card, if you have purged all of your hubris, you have survived. Otherwise, your face has melted off and you're eliminated from the game. But of those players who have survived, the player with the highest score is the winner of the game, and they have discovered the lost chalice and are the star of the film. Okay, so I hope everything makes sense. I hope you'll have a great time playing Lost Adventures. Thanks for playing.